Hello everyone, my name is Anishana and you are watching Kubernetes web series. Today our topic is RBAC and the agenda of this videos are first is what is RBAC, second is why we use RBAC, type of RBAC. Inside this we will try to learn rule and cluster rule, how to create rule and cluster rule through YAML file, rule binding and cluster rule binding, what are these objects, how to create rule and cluster rule from command line, how to create user, group, and service account in Kubernetes. We will try to install OpenSSL certificates in the lab, and at the end, we will do lab for RBAC. So let's proceed with the first topic, that is what is RBAC. RBAC stands for Rule Based Access Control. RBAC is a method of regulating access to computer or network resources based on the role of individual users within your organization. In simple words, we can say that we can apply the restriction on users with the help of RBAC. For an example, which users can list the objects, which users can create the objects on specific namespace, and so on. You may think about it, it can help to ensure that developers only deploy certain apps to a given namespace. We will talk about more on this, no worries. The RBAC API declare four kinds of Kubernetes objects. First one is rule, then rule binding, after that cluster rule, and the last is cluster rule binding. Now we understand what is RBAC. Now the question comes into the mind, why we use RBAC? Let's understand with the help of 3D animation why we need RBAC. Let's suppose we have one Kubernetes cluster. This cluster can be used by several teams or clients. Multi-tenant approach, as the workload of each tenant need to be isolated. Let's suppose we have two teams in an organization. One is deployment and the second one is operation team. Both teams want a dedicated space in the cluster. Both teams would like to maintain a space in the cluster. In the deployment team, in this space, they want full access to all their team members. It means they can list the pod, services, and other resources. Besides this, they want create and delete privileges so that they will not only build the application but also delete or modify it as per the project requirement. There are multiple users in the deployment team. Thus, consider a group named dev and provide right at group level as well. On the other hand, in operation team, some people need full access. Some engineers need only read access. It means restrictions are there. Who can create or modify the resources and who can only list the resources. Inside the namespaces, we can apply the restriction with the help of RBAC. Please bear in mind that deployment team must not see the resources of operation team, same as it is operation team must not see the resources of development team, as both teams are different. This can be achieved by partitioning the Kubernetes cluster into two namespaces, but the problem here is that if team needs to be work on multiple namespace, for this reason it would be good to use RBAC. This is our Kubernetes control plane. When user execute commands such as kubectl get pod, this request first authenticated with the user account. Remember, when we created the Kubernetes cluster, we executed this command. It means that this user from which you are logged in has Kubernetes cluster certificates and token mentioned in this file, that is config file. If you want to test this, you may log in into your system with different user and then execute this command. You will observe the error message because certificate and token are not placed on new user home directory. In the authentication section, it supports both external users, for an example apps deployment outside of the cluster, and internal users, for an example account created and managed by Kubernetes. Service account user is also an internal user, and I will cover in my coming slide. I will create internal users when we will perform the lab. Kubernetes supports standard authentication strategy such as static token, barrier token, X509 certificates, OIDC, etc. It supports multiple authentication strategy simultaneously. It means that we may use static token, or you can also allow anonymous access to the API. In step second, after the request is authenticated as coming from selected user, the request should be authorized. A request should include username of the requester and the requested action, and also the object affected by the action. The request is authorized if an existing policy declares that user has permission to complete the request action. It means RBAC. Today topic is RBAC. We will focus on this section today. I hope it is clear. We are in step 2. In step 3, it is admission control. I will talk about this later on some other videos. But for now, you just think about that this controller will check if port limit is reached or not. To understand better, for an example, in one deployment there are 5 replicas are there and we want to increase to 10. But our cluster has no resources available. So our request will be declined by the admission controller. Just for your information, in some organization, people use LDAP, TechX and other tools for authentication and authorization instead of using RBAC. But yes, this is the topic which should be covered in Kubernetes. So I'm completing this topic. Now the type of RBAC, rule and cluster rule. An RBAC rule or cluster rule contain rules that represent the set of permissions. Permissions are purely additive. It means that there are no deny rule. A rule set of permission within a particular namespace. When you create a rule, you must specify the namespace it belongs in. So we can say that role is a namespace object. In cluster rule are also set of permission on resources, but at global level. It means to all namespace. Thus, we can say that it is not a namespace object. Defining permission for namespace resources that provide access to all namespaces. Hence, we can conclude that when we want to set permission on particular namespace, then we can use role object. But when we want to set permission on all namespace, then we must use cluster role. We now understand that what are these objects. So now how to create these roles. RBAC authorization, use the rbac.authorization.k8s.io API group to drive authorization decision, allowing you to dynamically configure policies through the Kubernetes API. This is our simple rule manifest file. First one is API version, that is rbac.authorization.k8s.io version 1. If we use only version 1, we will observe the error message. Then kind equal to role, and here R is capital letter. After that, metadata. Inside this metadata, we specify namespace. As I said previously, role object is a namespace object. Thus, we will be going to create this role beneath the core namespace. Next is name. Here, we will be going to define the name of this rule so that we can identify it. The next is rule. Here we are using three array. The first one is API group. This field is empty. It means that it will be using default API, that is rbac.authorization.k8s.io. In resources array, we have mentioned which resource will be allowed to the user. In this case, user can access pods/logs command and deployment. You may define which resource is required. In the last array is verb, managing permission through verbs. We tell Kubernetes that on these resources what user can do. For an example, user can get the object, list the object and watch the object only. There is another way to create the manifest file. This is our previous YAML file. This is the new style but having the same content. In the metadata, we have defined name first and then namespace. It means that there is no harm to define the name first. In the API group, we have defined the array. In the resources, I mentioned star. It means that all the resources in this namespace will be granted. In the verb section, we have defined array, get, list and watch. This approach is easiest one. It's up to you what pattern you are comfortable. So in this YAML file, we have mentioned some resources, but here in this manifest file, we are allowing all the resources. Let's proceed next. This is our cluster rule manifest file. The API version is same, that is rbac.authorization. Kind is cluster rule. C and R are capitals. In the metadata section, we have defined only the name, that is admin-cr. One can notice we have not defined the namespace because cluster rule is not a namespace object. In the rule section, we have the same data as previous. In this cluster rule, people will get full access to the cluster. As of now, we get to know what are the rule and cluster rule. These are only the rules, right? We can implement these rules on users. Again, we have different objects who are managing the user profile. These object named as role binding and cluster role binding. We created a rule that we called role object. Now we can apply these rules on users. In RBAC, you can't apply role object to users directly. You have to create another object for this. Thus, we create role binding for role object and cluster role binding object is for cluster role object. Let's explore role binding first. This is our role binding YAML file. API version is same what we have used for role object. Kind is role binding. Here R and B are in capital letters. In the metadata section, we have mentioned the name of this object and use core namespace because role binding is also namespace object. Next we have subject. In this section, we defined kind equal to user and then name of user. In last, we have mentioned the group name, that is rbac.authorization. After that, role ref. The full form is role reference. Here we define the rule that will be applied to this rule binding object. This is the reason we have defined the existing name of role name in the name section under role ref. In short, we can say that we create role binding to define which user has access to role object. Kindly bear in mind, once you created a binding, I mean to say that role binding, You cannot modify the role ref. If you need to modify it, then first you need to delete the existing role binding and then recreate with the modification. I will show you in the lab. Same principles also used for cluster rule binding. However, the difference is namespace will be absent. API version is rbac.authorization, kind as cluster rule binding. Please note that C, R and B are in capital letters. Under metadata section, we have mentioned name of the object from which we can identify it. We have new section rule ref, rule reference. Beneath this, we mentioned kind, name and API group. Kind is cluster role and name is admin CR. That should be matched in the cluster role name. In the API group, we have rbac.authorization. Under subjects section, we have again kind, name and API group. Kind is user, name is Raja and API group is rbac.authorization.k8s.io. Please note that we can define username, group name and service account. I will cover this point in my upcoming slides. In this topic, we will try to understand how to create rule and cluster rule from command line and also how to create bindings. In this command, we have mentioned rule and the name of this role is development 11. Under core namespace, we are going to create this role. And here we are mentioned verb get, list and watch. And at the end, we mentioned the resource type is pod. In the next command, we can also club verb separated by comma. In the third command, we can mention different resources separated by comma. I'm just going to share you the different way you can use the command line. After that, here the resource name, we can also define the resource name here. So test-pod2 is my resource name here. In this example, we are creating a rule binding and the name of this rule binding is dev rb1 and here hyphen hyphen rule inside this namespace and hyphen hyphen rule development 11. So this is my existing rule name. After that, I have mentioned hyphen hyphen user equal to Raja. So when we going to create rule binding, we have to mention rule name and which user we are going to bind with this role. If I'm using this list pod auth can I is the command we can use kubectl auth can I list pod hyphen hyphen name core as a Raja. So it will produce me yes, I have the privileges to list pod. If I'm going to use create pod instead of list pod, I must see no. Why? Because here we mention only get, list and watch. If I use list secret, I will get no. Regarding the cluster rule and cluster rule binding, we can use these commands. For an example, when we use kubectl create option followed by cluster rule and the name of this cluster rule. Here the name of this cluster rule is deploy hyphen secret cr2 and then verb is get, list and watch and followed by resource pod. In the next example, here we can define resource name testpod1 and testpod2 same as it is for root. In this example, we have mentioned different type of resources separated by comma. After that, we can also define verb star and resource star. It means that all the verbs means all the privileges this user will get if it's bind with this cluster rule, and all resources, whatever the object we have created inside this cluster, Kubernetes cluster, user will get it. And here one can notice I use role binding, and the name of this role binding is this, and followed by cluster rule. We can also bind role binding with cluster rule, and we have mentioned user equal to Raja minus n core namespace, followed by this one cluster rule binding. We can also create cluster rule binding followed by the name of this cluster rule binding, and whom we are binding with this cluster rule followed by username. In this example, we have mentioned service account followed by namespace and then service account name. I will cover in my upcoming slides about the service account. Don't worry, a full slide will be there. These are the examples that we can use. We can create cluster rule and cluster rule binding. Now the next topic is how to create user, group and service account in Kubernetes cluster. We have normal users. First, we need to generate the key. Second step is create certificate signing request, CSR short form. In step 3, we can download the certificate CRT from CA, Certificate Authority API. The first thing is that we can use OpenSSL. Second is EasyRSA, and the third one is CFSSL. And this is the URL. If you want to learn more, you can go through this URL. And the fourth one is use CRT plus key. I will explore everything in the lab, don't worry. This is just a theory part. Service account. Whenever you are access to Kubernetes cluster with kubectl, you are authenticated by Kubernetes with your user account. User account are meant to be used by human, but when a pod is running in a cluster, want to access the Kubernetes API server, it need to use a service account. A service account are just like a user account but for non-human. In Kubernetes, pod and services are system objects. Thus, it is easy to manage these resources from system user. For that reason, we are using service account. Besides this, it is especially important for security reasons. When we have a CI/CD pipeline agent deploying our application to the same cluster, it uses service account user. Default service account. By default, application will authenticate as a default service account in the namespace they are running in. This means, for an example, that an application running in test namespace will use the default service account of test namespace. This service account generated by Kubernetes, thus it has its own token validated by Kubernetes cluster. So when we are going to create deployment nginx, let's suppose we created one deployment, and after that when we use kubectl get command, we will see the pod is running. When we get this nginx port into a YAML file, we will see the service account equal to default. We have not created this service account, right? But Kubernetes bind our port with this service account. We can also check the token when we log in inside the pod and cat this file under where run secret kubernetes.io service account token. We can see this token. Whenever my container is access to API, it sent this token, and my Kubernetes cluster knows that this token is validated because it is provided by our Kubernetes cluster. Now the fourth topic is how to create service account. We know what is service account, so how to create. I'm sharing one example how we can use service account with cluster rule and cluster rule binding. In order to perform these actions, first I need to create namespace app-team1. After that, create cluster rule and the name of this cluster rule is deployment-cluster rule. This cluster rule has create privileges, that is verb equal to create, and the resources we assigned are deployment, stateful set and daemon set. Further, we create service account and the syntax would be service account CI/CD token under app-team1 namespace. CI/CD token is the name of this service account. We can also use service account under default one, but in the production we always use namespace. Next, we create cluster rule binding and the name is deploy-b and bind with cluster rule and also bind with service account username. Please bear in mind the syntax of service account. First, we use equal sign, then mention the namespace followed by colon and then service account name, that is CI/CD-token in our scenario. Last, we can check if system user, that is service account user, has the privileges to create deployment under namespace app-1, and the answer should be yes. In the command we use auth can I create deployment as. This time we use system colon service account colon namespace colon service account name, and at the end we mention the namespace equal to app-1. One can notice here we define service account equal to, but here we use colon. I hope it is clear now. So let's move to the next topic. Now let's proceed with lab and some exam questions. In order to proceed the lab, I have logged in into my GitHub page. You need to click on Kubernetes directory and then scroll down and click on our CLI login. It is my master server, and what version I have using CentOS Stream release 9. If you follow my lab, you will get to know from where I have installed this CentOS 9 and what version I'm using here. It is 1.25. Let me clear the window. First, you need to check if RBAC is enabled or not at cluster level. For this, for me, it is enabled by default. So let me check here. You can use cat etc kubernetes manifest file and grab RBAC here. Let me execute this command here. If you observe this output, it means RBAC is enabled. Authorization hyphen mode is RBAC. It is enabled for me by default. For you, I just kept this as a references. Let me create one namespace, core namespace I created, and then in this manifest file, I'm going to create rule and the name of this rule is dev rule1, namespace is core, resource is all. It means the user who assigned this rule would have the privileges to list, watch, create, update, delete, get to any resources, whether it's deployment, stateful, config map, pods, whatever. Let me copy and hit enter here. Apply this rule. From the output, we get to know that this is created. Now it's time to create the role binding for development team. namespace is again it is this role binding is creating inside this core namespace. Kind is user and name of this user is dev, and we are using the previous rule that we created earlier, right? Copy and hit enter. Again it is created. Clear the window. For how to check role and role binding are created successfully. For role we can use get role and minus n core namespace. The output it is saying it is created at this time. For role binding again we can use the same command get. For both we can check both simultaneously. For this we can use separated by comma. How to describe? We can also describe the role. From the describe we will have more output, and from the output we get to know that this rule name is this and resource is star and verb what privileges it has, this one, non-resource URL and resources name is this. Same as it is for role binding, we will have more info. The name of this role binding is this and it is bind with this role. Which user it is assigned? Dev user it is assigned. If I go down, how to check if dev user has the privileges? So I just copy this command. Here I'm using kubectl auth. Can I less secret hyphen hyphen namespace core hyphen hyphen as dev user? It says yes, you have privileges. And if I'm using Raja user, let me check here. We have given the privileges to dev user only, right? If I'm executing same command for Raja user, I will observe no. Kubernetes cluster will say that you don't have privileges, man. Get out from here. Role for operation team, read only. In this time, we are going to create another rule, but for operation team, and it is for read only. Here we define some resources only, and the verb is get, list, and watch. Verbs means privileges, what you can do, and on which object you can do is resources. Copy and paste, insert with the help of create command. I created this one, and now in the role binding, again it is creating inside this core namespace and it will assign this rule to Raja user and use is rule. What rule we are going to use? Bind here this one. Quite simple, but it is a chain that you have to be take care of that if this chain is working. If it's break in somewhere, you will not get the desired result. How to check if Raja user has the privileges? If I'm executing this command, I will get yes. And if I'm using different, as you can see here that here I'm using less secret, but secret I have not defined here. Let me show you here. Pods and deployment. List pod, yes, you can list the pod. If I say list secret, no man, you have no privileges to list secret. That's the beauty of RBAC. It comes how to clear the lab. These are the commands that I can use here. You can explore yourself why I do this thing, and you observe any issue, you can comment on my YouTube video. I will try to reply back to you. RBAC is not here. Okay, maybe some typo is mistake, but you can use this thing. Before launching this video, I will try to remove this error. Now, there is one question. You have been asked to create a new role for deployment pipeline and bind it to user Raja. Task is create a new role named deployment hyphen rule which only allow in the existing namespace app hyphen team1 to create the following type. Solution. We have asked to create deployment rule and indirectly asked to create a rule binding. Here the verb is create, from where I get this create a new rule deployment which will allow only existing namespaces to create the following resources. It means it is asking, the verb is create only, and resources are these. Raja is user is Raja, namespace is this. We can complete this question through command line as well as YAML 2. So command line options are here. Kubectl get namespace. First, we are going to check if this namespace is already created or not. It is not. If not, then create the namespace. Kubectl create namespace app1. Create a role object in the namespace app team1 and verb should be create. And resource is this. We have already covered this thing, all these parameters in the theory part, but just for information, we are creating some object inside this namespace and the object type is rule and the name of this rule is this, verb is create and resources are this. As I said previously, rules object are namespace object. Create a rule binding here inside the namespace this one, and here we are defining hyphen hyphen rule is this user Raja. Copied and created. It is created here. After that, we can describe the role objects. Again, both we can describe here. Role binding is this. Let me clear the window and clear and execute this command again. This one. Role is this. So these are the resources and verb is created here. How we can also check if user has the privileges to create deployment or not. Again, we can use auth. Can I create deployment as Raja? It says yes. You have privileges. What happen if I use pod instead of deployment? We have defined here deployment, but here we are check if pod is created. So it says no. It means that what we have created, it is working as per our expectations. How to delete role binding and namespace. First, we need to delete the role binding because role binding is bind with role. How to delete the role binding? First, we must identify where is my role binding. In this, get role binding and deploy this one. It is there, same as it is for role binding. It is, so we deleted this role binding after confirmation. Okay, now how to delete the role? First, I need to check if this role is exist or not. Yes, it is exist, and the name is good. So I'm going to delete this rule again. Yes, I delete it. How to delete the namespace? First, I'm going to check if any objects are there inside this namespace or not. It is not the case. Then safely I can remove this namespace. Our lab 1 is completed successfully without any error. That's a good news. Now you need to click on here, RPEC, and then click on 02 cluster and cluster rule binding. Let's proceed for the second lab, that is cluster rule and cluster rule binding. How to know how many default cluster rules are there? We can use this command. As you can see here that many cluster rules are created here. In this cluster rule, the name of this cluster rule is cluster rule, And API groups, we have two API groups. One is app and the second one is RBAC authorization. In the resources, we have mentioned all, star means all, and verbs. All verbs are included inside this cluster rule. Paste it over here and then create this cluster rule object. From the output, it is says it is created. In the cluster rule binding, the name of this cluster rule binding is this, and it bind with cluster rule admin CR that we created in the previous step. And the API group is RBAC authorization. Inside this subject section, we have mentioned user, Ashok, and the API group is RBAC. That's it. Let me create this object cluster role binding. From the output, it is says successfully created. How to check cluster rule is successfully created? We can use describe or get command. And if we use get, kubectl get, we will get only two output here. Let me execute this command again here. How to check cluster rule binding is created successfully? Again, we can use describe cluster rule binding and then cluster rule binding name. How to check if this user Ashok has the rights to create deployment or not? We can use this command and it says yes, this user has the right to create daemon set. How to clear the lab? There are two options. First, if we don't have manifest files, then we can grab admin CR. From the output, we get to know cluster rule and cluster rule binding. There are two objects. So we can copy this name and delete. Simple. The other way is that if we know the manifest file, we can use this command. How to remove the files that we created earlier? So rm space minus rf, that's it. Clear the window. Question 1. Use context K8s. You have been asked to create a new cluster rule for the deployment pipeline and bind it to a specific service account scope to a specific namespace. Please bear in mind, whenever we are creating any cluster rule or cluster rule binding, it should not be namespace object, right? But here it is asked to create service account with some specific namespace. Task is create a new cluster rule named deployment-app-cluster rule, which only allowed to create the following resources type. It means the verb is create and the resources are deployment, stateful set, daemon set. Create a new service account named CI/CD-app in the existing namespace, that is app-team1. Bind the new cluster role deployment app this to the new service account CI/CD app limited to the namespace app-team1. This service account is created inside this CI/CD app. It means indirectly question is asking us to create role binding instead of cluster role binding. Why? Because in cluster role binding, it should not be namespace object. But here we are, when we add any object inside any namespace, then we have to create role binding. In the solution, I have already covered the important things, that is cluster, what is the name of cluster rule, service account name, namespace. Here first we need to create a namespace. Let me copy here and paste it over here. After it, I'm going to create cluster rule and the name of this cluster rule is deployment-app-cluster rule. Verb is create and the resources are deployment, stateful set and daemon set. Copy command here and paste it over here. After that, I need to create service account and the name of the service account is CI/CD-app. Under namespace app hyphen team1. This is the reason I used minus n app hyphen 1 while creating this service account. Let me paste, copy and paste over here. After that, in question, it is asked to give access to a specific namespace. Thus, it is indirectly asking to create rule binding instead of cluster rule. Create role binding and bind with cluster rule. This is the reason here we are creating role binding and name whatever we want, we can give it here. After that, bind with this cluster rule. Service account equal to namespace colon service account name and then followed by minus n namespace. Remember, role binding is a namespace object. Let me paste over here. In my lab, you can also create cluster rule binding and bind with cluster rule and allow system user this and use minus n app daemon. It works for me, but I'm not sure why it is working. However, in exam, you should create role binding instead of cluster rule binding. Describe the cluster rule and check the value. We can check. This is what it is asked in the question. Verbs are create and resources are these three. Let me describe the cluster rule here. After that, I need to describe this rule binding, but here I need to use minus n app service account and the namespace is here. In the end, it's time to check if the service account user has the right to create deployment. I just copied here and pasted over here. In this command, I mentioned kubectl auth can I create deployment as system service account namespace and then service account username followed by namespace. It should print yes. If it print yes, it means our question is right. Whatever we have created, all are perfectly fine. Let's move to our fourth lab. Create this thing, and this question can come in CK exam also. Now let's go back to the third lab, that is user with open certificate. In the third lab, it is for user with open SSL certificate. The first step is creating a client certificate for a user is to generate a private key. The private key will be used to sign the certificate and must be kept secure. In order to generate private key, we can use OpenSSL, EasyRSA, CFSSL. I'm going to use OpenSSL tool here. The command is OpenSSL generate RSA hyphen out raja.key 2048. In this file, it will generate. Okay, so let me copy here. Before that, I'm just going to create one directory here, rbac, and go inside this rbac so that I can delete everything, right? Whatever I want. If I execute ls space ltr, I will observe raja.key file. The above command generate 2048-bit RSA private key and save it on the file raja.key file. And step 2, create a certificate signing request. Short form is CSR. In this step, we are going to create CSR with the help of private key that we generated at step 1. The CSR contains information about the user, for an example, its name and email address, and is used to request a digital certificate from the certificate authority, CA. The command is OpenSSL request new hyphen key, the file that we created previously, and it will generate one CSR file. And here we are mentioning subject, cn equal to common name Raja, O is organization, but in Kubernetes we use as a group dev and one more group, that is example.org. Let me copy this command here and execute over here. As you can observe, CSR file is generated. In the above command, as I said, sub flag specify the subject of CSR, which includes CN common name and O is organization. However, in the Kubernetes, it use O as a group name. Common name is Raja, what we have defined here. This will be used to identify him against the API server. Group dev and the second group is example.org. Above command will create another file that we have observed in the terminal. In step 3, sign the certificate with a CA, certificate authority. When we install the Kubernetes cluster with kubeadm command, at that time CA also installed. A CA is a trusted entity that uses digital certificates which are used to authenticate users and services. In production environment, we may use public CA such as DigiCerts and other things. But here I'm going to use inbuilt CA to self-sign CA with OpenSSL. By default, CA path would be etc Kubernetes PKI. Let me check this directory here. As you can observe, CA key certs file are here. Okay. CA certificate is this ca.crt, CAK is ca.key, and CSR is raja.csr that we generated in the step 2. This is the by default directory. Let me clear the window here and copy this command. In this command, we are going to generate the certificate. N is this CSR. We have given the CA that our CSR file is this and it will generate Raja's certificate. And it says everything is good. And if I execute this command, I will observe CRT file is there generated by our CA. And I can check the Kubernetes config, what we have current config here. As you can observe, my cluster name is Kubernetes and name of my user is Kubernetes-admin only. Now I'm going to add one more config inside this kubectl config file. Here I'm defining set credentials for Raja and hyphen hyphen client certificate is this. If you have different directory, initially I created RBAC directory, right? If you created a different directory, then you need to modify the path here and then client key. Again, you need to modify this path. That's it. So I'm going to copy this command and put it over here. It says user Raja is set. Check the Kubernetes config file again. Here the second option is hyphen hyphen raw. It will produce all these things. Let me show you in second way. But now if I am executing this command kubectl config view, now a new user entry is added, that is for Raja. If I'm executing this command raw, I can see the client key, encrypted key values. Just for your information, check the current context in Kubernetes cluster. Config get context. Context is a different thing. Right now, we are logging in with this context. We can create a different context from where user will use. As of now, this context is the by default for Kubernetes. And the name of this cluster is this. Create context for Raja user. How we can create the new context? The command would be kubectl config Set context, Raja context. You can write anything right here. And hyphen hyphen cluster equal to Kubernetes. This is my name of my Kubernetes cluster. You can see cluster Kubernetes. If you have different name, then you need to modify this command here. And then hyphen hyphen name space core. Let's suppose I want to create user that will work only on one namespace, then I will mention here namespace equal to core and hyphen hyphen user equal to Raja. Remember in the certificate subject flag we have mentioned Raja as a user, right? So I'm just copy this command here and execute here. From the output you observe Raja hyphen context created. Check the current context again. I'm using Kubernetes hyphen admin context. And if I'm again using get context, I must see two contexts, Raja context and Kubernetes context. In the last lab, we have question. You have asked to create a role config hyphen role which allow only user Suraj to create only config map on app hyphen config namespace. Consume this config map in a pod using a volume mount. Please complete the following. Create a config map name another config containing the key value pair is key30 red color. Start a pod name nginx-config map containing a single container using nginx image and mount the key you just created into the pod under directory some path. This pod must be created only those node which has the label disk type equal to SSD. Now the solution is that I have just captured all the key points here. Namespace, it is asked to create config map inside app-config. Rule, I need to create role and the name of this role is config-role. Verb is create and resource is only config map. User is Suraj. Suraj should have the privilege to create config map inside app-config namespace. And the pod name is this. Config map is this that I need to create, and inside this config map I need to add key value pair. Key is key30 and the value is red color. And the image of container should be nginx and it should be mounted inside some path. Here you noticed one more thing, node selector. It is asked in the question disk type equal to SSD. This port must be created only those node which has the label disk type equal to SSD. Here I'm going to create one new directory root rbac. I'm already in one directory root rbac, so let me delete everything from inside here. What we have, nothing inside this. First I need to check the show label kubectl get node hyphen hyphen show labels. If I'm executing this command and if I check this worker node 1 and worker node 2 labels, I don't see disk type equal to SSD. So what I can do here, I can add the label with the help of kubectl label node worker node 1 and then disk type equal to SSD. If I execute this command and again grab disk, I will observe a new inside only worker node 1. Again executing the same command and to for worker node 2, and this time I will observe two things here disk type equal to SSD. As of now we have fulfilled only one requirement. The second requirement is I need to create a config inside namespace app config. So I need to create this namespace first. This is the command. And now I'm going to create config map. The name of this config map is another config that is mentioned in the question. Hyphen hyphen from literal equal to key equal to red color minus n app config. This command will create a new config map inside app config. I have already created one video for config map. If you have not watched, please, I recommend you to watch that video. kubectl minus an app config get config maps. Another config is created here. In order to create a role, we can open the Kubernetes web page. This one. Let me open in a new tab here. And in the documentation, in the exam, you will do like this and search rule. Click on the first URL. I need to like this Control F and then Control V. I will observe here one manifest file that we can use here. We can copy this manifest file and update as per the command. This is my role and namespace. I have mentioned app config. Name of this rule is config-rule and rule API group is by default it will take RBAC. In the resources, I have mentioned config maps only. Verb is create. This is what we have asked. In the role binding, the name of this role binding, anything you can mention the name because it is not mentioned in the question. But namespace should be app-config. In the subject, user must be Suraj and role is config-role that we are going to create here. That's it. Clear the window. For creating the config map, we can copy the YAML file from the Kubernetes. Again, we can search volume and then config map. Pod. Inside this pod manifest file, I have mentioned node selector disk type equal to SSD. It means that this port will only create it where the node selector label is set to disk type SSD. In our case, I have already set this label on my worker node 1 and worker node 2. In the container section, I have mentioned the image name should be Nginx and the volume mount is some path. Name is this and volume is this. I have already covered one video for volume. If you have not watched that video, I recommend you please watch that video so that you can understand what I'm saying here. And the config map, another config, the name of my another config, and the key is 30 and the path is also I mentioned key 30. That's it. If I copy and paste it over here. Role and role binding are created and let me create this pod. No resource found. Okay. I need to copy this command first and then minus W. It takes some time to come up this pod. Now it is running here. Control C. I can execute this command and check if Suraj has the privileges to create config map under namespace app config. If it should be yes, yes. I Suraj user can create the config map. Now create a system user Suraj and also create a certificate for him. Last time we created only the certificate, that's it, but we are not used. But this time we are going to use the certificate as in actual production environment. Here I'm going to generate the key first and then CSR certificate signing request and then generate the certificate. Certificate are generated. Signature is good. Config get context. Clear the window and we have two contexts here. Let me delete this Raja context first. kubectl config delete context, Raja context. Okay. Now here I'm going to create one new context for Suraj. Kubernetes get context if it's created successfully or not. Yes, it is created. Config use context. Give me one moment, please. Let me check here. And here I have not executed this command. Let me execute this command config set credential. Yes, this command I have config set context. Okay, this is what we have created here, right? RBAC, no, this command is not executed here. Now this command is also executed. If I'm going to use Kubernetes config view, I should see Suraj entry is there here. That's great. Now let's check if I create the config map. It says yes, but this is for root user, right? Kubernetes user, not for Suraj. Here I'm going to use Suraj context. Now I'm switched to Suraj context and let's see if I can create the config map. Yes, I can create the config map. It means that this certificate we have created a separate dedicated context. So whenever Suraj is logging into the Kubernetes cluster, it always use this context. And whatever we have defined for Suraj, it can execute only those commands. Right here, you can create config map only, but if I let's say create deployment, the answer is no. This is how we can implement the RBAC on the users to limit what they can do on which namespace they can do. How to switch back to admin user. There is a command here. And now how to delete rule and rule binding. We can use this one. Rule binding is this. And now going to delete. Let me clear the window. How to delete the config map. So delete -n config map. I have already covered in my previous video, so I'm not going to explain this. How to delete the context. This is the new one. Identify which context you are. So first you need to get context. It says Suraj and Kubernetes admin. Check the current config, which config I am. This is my config view and current config. I need to execute kubectl config current context. I'm in Kubernetes admin context. So I can delete the context of Suraj if I want. So this is the command is deleted. Config delete user deleted. Now if I'm using this command kubectl config view, I should not see Suraj information here. However, I can see Raja because I have not deleted Raja user. And then Suraj, if I copy, clear all everything, and it should not see a single file here for the Suraj. Delete the namespace, a file that we created here. So this is the single command that I can use here. Right click and paste it over here. So it will delete the pod, delete namespace hyphen graceful period 0 hyphen hyphen force. So everything is removed from here. Before closing this call, let me tell you that role and cluster rule. This is we create for rules, right? And role is only for namespace object and cluster rule is for apply on all cluster. Role binding and cluster role binding is used for assigning the rules for user group and service account and where the rule is applied. This is what we have defined in the role binding and cluster role binding. Role binding can also be assigned or bind to cluster role. That's it. Thank you very much.